It was early in the morning, long before the sun had risen, when Dr. Watson was suddenly woken by a loud knock at his door. He had only just opened his practice in Kensington and didn't expect visitors at such an hour. But there stood a young man, pale as a ghost, with one arm wrapped tightly in a blood-soaked cloth. "I'm sorry to trouble you, doctor," the man said faintly, "but I've had a serious accident, and I think I'm bleeding badly." Dr. Watson, though surprised, quickly helped the man inside and sat him down. Once he unwrapped the cloth, he saw the wound was worse than expected. The man's thumb, his entire thumb, was missing. Clean gone. It had been sliced off, not crushed or torn. Watson knew it was no ordinary injury. As he cleaned and bandaged the wound, he asked gently, "How did this happen?" The young man, still pale but calmer now, said, "It's a strange story. I was the only passenger in a late-night train, taken far into the countryside for a job I should never have accepted." And so, the tale began. Victor Hatherley was a young hydraulic engineer, clever with machines, especially ones that used pressure and water. But he hadn't been lucky lately. Jobs were few, and his money was running low. So when a strange visitor came to his office one day, offering a large sum for a single night's work, he was quick to listen. The man was tall and thin, with a sharp face, and spoke with a foreign accent. He introduced himself as Colonel Lysander Stark, and said he needed Victor's help to repair a hydraulic press in the countryside. But there was a condition: complete secrecy. "No one must know," Stark said. "The job is delicate and private. I'll pay you 50 guineas for one night's work, if you tell no one." Victor was surprised. 50 guineas was a fortune for a single job. Still, something about the man felt off. He was nervous, always glancing around, and never gave the name of the place they were going. But the promise of good pay pushed Victor's doubts aside. He agreed. That very night he met Stark again. A silent driver waited with a carriage. Victor was told to bring no luggage, no tools. Everything would be provided. Without knowing where he was going, he stepped into the carriage and was driven into the darkness. The adventure had begun. Victor sat quietly in the carriage, jolting along dark, twisting country roads. The windows were covered, so he couldn't see where they were going. The only sounds were the horses' hooves and the steady creak of the wheels. The night air grew colder, and a strange feeling settled over him. The feeling that he was being led somewhere he wasn't meant to go. After what felt like hours, the carriage stopped. They had arrived. He was helped out by the same silent driver, and before him stood a lonely house, surrounded by fields and woods. There were no lamps outside, no smoke rising from a chimney, just a single light shining from one upstairs window. The place was too quiet. Inside, the hallway was dim and plain. No servants greeted them, no sound of life. Only one person appeared, a pale, serious-looking woman with dark hair and frightened eyes. She looked at Victor, then at Stark, and seemed about to say something, but stopped herself and turned away. "Pay no mind to her," Stark said quickly. "She knows nothing of our business." Victor followed him into a sitting room, where he was offered a glass of wine and asked to wait. Everything felt secretive, rushed, even wrong. Still, the promise of payment kept him there. He told himself it was just an unusual job. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "Be careful." Victor didn't wait long before Colonel Stark returned and led him deeper into the house. The wooden floorboards creaked under their feet. There were no family portraits, no carpets, no decorations. just bare walls and heavy shadows. It was a house that didn't feel lived in. As they walked, Stark explained the job. He said they owned a factory nearby where they worked with fuller's earth, a kind of clay used to clean grease from wool. According to him, they needed a strong press to squeeze the moisture from it. But the press had broken, and no one else could fix it. That's why they had called for Victor. "I must remind you," Stark said, his eyes narrow, "that our process is secret. You will not speak of what you see tonight, not to anyone." Victor agreed, though his doubts were growing. They passed the pale woman again. This time she stepped closer. In a low voice, just above a whisper, she said, "Don't go down there. Whatever he's told you, it's not safe." Before Victor could respond, Stark turned sharply and scolded her in a foreign language. The woman lowered her eyes and backed away, fear written all over her face. Victor hesitated. Every step forward now felt like walking deeper into something hidden and dangerous. But he followed Stark to a narrow staircase, leading down into the basement. The air grew colder. The stone walls were damp. In the center of the room stood the machine, the hydraulic press. It looked solid, strong, and oddly new. Too new for something supposedly used to crush clay. Still, Victor knelt beside it, ready to begin the inspection. He didn't yet know. This machine was meant to do something far worse. Victor studied the hydraulic press carefully. The machine was powerful, too powerful for what Colonel Stark claimed it was used for. He had worked with many presses before, and this one wasn't designed for clay. No, this was something else entirely. It had been built for crushing with incredible force, far more than was needed for any normal factory work. He looked around the basement. There were no signs of fuller's earth, no piles of clay, no tools, no smell of damp soil, nothing that matched Stark's story. Everything was clean, almost too clean. Victor straightened up. "There's something strange here," he said cautiously. "The machine seems in perfect working order. What exactly do you use it for?" Stark's face changed. His friendly tone vanished. His voice turned cold. "You have seen enough." Before Victor could move, Stark lunged toward the wall and pulled a lever. With a sudden hiss of steam, the press shuddered to life. The great metal plate above began to drop, slowly but surely, heading straight for the spot where Victor had been examining the machinery. He leapt back just in time, heart pounding. The heavy plate smashed down where he had been kneeling a second before. Stark advanced on him, fury in his eyes. "You fool!" he shouted. "You were warned!" Victor tried to run, but Stark grabbed him. In the struggle, Victor's hand was slammed near the edge of the machine. Pain exploded through him. He looked down and saw blood. His thumb had been caught. He staggered back, gasping. Then, just as suddenly, she appeared. The pale woman from earlier, eyes wide with terror, holding a lamp. "This way!" she cried. "Quick, before they kill you!" Victor didn't hesitate. He ran. Victor ran, stumbling through the narrow hall as the pale woman led the way, her lamp flickering wildly. Behind them came the sound of boots on stone, shouting in a harsh foreign voice. Colonel Stark and the others were close, and they were furious. "This way," she whispered, pulling him toward a side passage. "Hurry!" Victor's head spun. His hand throbbed terribly, blood still dripping from the place where his thumb had been. But he couldn't stop. He couldn't think. He could only run. They darted through the house like ghosts in the dark. Hallways twisted strangely. Doors led to locked rooms. The woman seemed to know the way, but even she was trembling. At last, they reached a small room with a shuttered window. She threw it open. "Jump," she said. "There's a ledge. You can climb down to the garden." "What about you?" he asked, breathless. "I'll stay. I have nowhere else to go. But you must leave now." He wanted to thank her, but there was no time. He climbed through the window, clung to the ledge with his good hand, and began to lower himself down. The stone was slick, the wind cold, and his whole body shook with pain and fear. Just as he dropped to the ground, he heard the door upstairs slam open. They had found the empty room. Voices shouted. A gunshot cracked through the air. Victor ducked low and ran into the trees. Branches clawed at his coat. The forest was dark, the night silent except for the sound of his own breathing. He didn't look back. He didn't stop. He just ran. Victor didn't know how long he ran. The trees eventually thinned, and he found himself on a quiet country road under the pale light of early morning. His hand throbbed with every heartbeat, the sleeve soaked through with blood. His legs felt heavy, and his thoughts were foggy. But he kept walking. At last, he saw the shape of a cottage in the distance, smoke rising from the chimney. A farmer was tending to a cart in the yard. When he saw Victor stumbling toward him, pale, bleeding, and barely standing, his eyes went wide with shock. Without a word, the farmer helped him inside and sent for the local doctor. Victor was given something for the pain and wrapped in warm blankets. He drifted in and out of sleep, barely remembering how he got to the train station later that day. Someone helped him onto a train bound for London, and somehow, in all his pain and confusion, he made his way to Dr. Watson's door. That's where his strange and terrible tale had begun, and where, for now, it paused. Dr. Watson brought Victor to 221B Baker Street, where Sherlock Holmes was already waiting. Holmes listened carefully, his sharp eyes never missing a single detail. "A hydraulic press, you say?" Holmes mused. "And a secret job in the countryside with a foreign man?" Holmes leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers. "The story of Fuller's Earth is a clever lie. There is no clay, no factory. The press was not meant to squeeze clay. It was built for something else." Watson looked puzzled. "What could it be used for?" Holmes smiled slightly. "To crush coins, to create counterfeit money. The men behind this scheme needed someone skilled to repair their machine, but they had no intention of letting him leave." He stood up suddenly. "We must find this house and stop the criminals before they hurt anyone else." Holmes carefully questioned Victor about every step of his journey. The train, the carriage, the road, the house, and pieced together clues from the smallest details. "We have enough to start," he said. "The chase is on." Holmes and Watson set off quickly for the countryside, following the clues Victor had given them. The journey was long, but Holmes's sharp mind never wavered. They reached the spot where the house should have stood, but there was nothing left. The ground was scorched and blackened. The building was gone, burned to the ground. No signs of the criminals remained, only ashes and silence. Holmes knelt down and examined the earth. "They destroyed the house to cover their tracks," he said. "But the truth cannot be hidden forever." Though the counterfeiters had escaped, their plans were ruined. Victor's courage had saved him, and perhaps many others from falling into the same trap. As they prepared to return to London, Holmes looked thoughtful. "There will always be shadows in the world, Watson. But as long as there are those willing to seek the light, evil will never win." Victor, though missing his thumb, was safe, and his strange adventure was finally over.